Hello everyone, welcome to this week's GT Sport Daily Race C race review. We're at Suzuka Circuit and we're taking the N200-Mazda Roadster touring car around it for 8 laps on sports hard tyres with tyre wear at times 16, fuel consumption at times 4 and with a pit stop of 13 seconds. This one is very much a no stopper. With the tyre wear being a little bit of a problem towards the end. So thanks very much to everyone who voted in the poll that I put out on whether we're going to feature Womble Boss or Womble Skipper in this video. I was quite surprised by the number of people that actually voted, so again thanks very much for anyone who took the time to click that button. Womble Boss was the winner by quite a margin. I think it was around about 73 to 27%, so Womble Boss will be featured in this video. But we're going to take a look at 3 races. And they're going to kind of mess up in various ways in them, but there's some good action, so please do stick around. Please do hit that like button, please do hit that subscribe button if you haven't already. It does help the channel to grow slowly but surely. But let's get into the action in this one. So this one is a grid start with a false start check, so you've got to be careful at the beginning not to jump the start and pick up a penalty. We start this one down in 7th place behind Brackus here. I think my qualifying time at this point was just a 2 minutes 32. I think we just jumped in for a couple of quick laps, and because of the way the races are actually quite long, and by the time you get back into the lobby to do a qualifying lap, you generally don't have time for the next race to improve that lap. So this is the beauty of the grid starts. Yes, it can be a bit manic into turn number 1, but in these cars everyone tends to get a very similar start, so that kind of concertina effect is reduced a little bit in this type of car, but it does keep everybody nice and close in the opening laps. Sometimes in the rolling starts you can end up around about 10-15 seconds behind, depending on where you start on the grid. If you obviously stand towards the back of the field on a rolling start, you can be 10-15 seconds down by this point in the race. But here we are in 7th place, about 1.5 seconds off the leader. The whole field probably contained within around about 3 to 4 seconds at this point. So I do think grid starts are a good thing for the game. I'd like to see a few more of them being used, just to keep that kind of keep the pack nice and compact in the early stages of the race and give you somebody to race from the get-go. So we've made up one position there into the hairpin at Suzuka. Brackus and Lawrence had a little bit of a contact, allowed me to go round the outside of Brackus and get on the throttle nice and early, and that's one position made up. Got Lawrence 3-2-1 in front of us, and we're in the slipstream as we head down the back straight towards 130R for the first time. So 130R in this car is full throttle, but you must get the line right. If you get the line a little bit off, you can go wide onto the marbles on the left hand side, so the right hand side, maybe hit that curb and spin round. So you do take a lot of curb here just to make sure you've got plenty track to play with on the exit. Everybody getting through 130R reasonably well there in this opening lap, and everybody then closing up as we come into the Casio triangle for the first time. So we're well in the slipstream here of Lawrence on the run down to turn number 1. Now if you look up ahead you can see there's 2 black cars, that's P1 and P2. Look like they're having a little bit of a fight as we go into turn number 1. So we'll join on board with them. We're with a Spaniard driver here, and we've got an Italian in front of us. So it looks fairly civilised at this point, but the Italian's going to go wide into turn number 1. He's going to lose it on the exit, take the Spaniard off the track, and as the Spaniard comes back on, he's going to cause a bit of mayhem. Now, there's quite a bit of contact between myself and Lawrence there. However, we thought we had got away with it, but it seemed like an awful long time. We then get slapped with a 5-second penalty. So yeah, of all the cars that were involved in the contact there, I was the one that picked up the penalty. So let's just take a look at that from the onboard camera. We see the incident going on up ahead. To be fair, we are a bit slow to react on the brakes. We probably could have avoided any major contact there, but you can just see the delay between the contact and this penalty popping up. I really did think I got away with it. Now, in all the races that I've done on this one, and I've done maybe 10-12 races between the 2 accounts that I've been racing on at the moment, I have not seen anybody with a 5-second penalty. So in that regard, we've managed to sort of make ourselves feel a little bit special. But it's not going to be a special feeling as we come to the gates here to serve this 5-second penalty. So we're in 7th place as we serve the penalty. Any penalty at Suzuka is pretty crippling just because we serve it on this back straight. But we're going to go all the way from 7th down to 13th. So we are very much now set for our recovery drive, so let's see if we can make any progress up through the field. And quite quickly we started to make a little bit of progress. Next lap around, Lawrence has had some kind of instant into the Casio triangle and has been spun around on the track there, so that was us up into 12th position. A little bit later we passed the pole, serving a penalty, and then coming into turn number 1 here as a Spaniard wide, and that puts us up into 9th position. A little bit later we pass Hodge through the S's, who goes a little bit wide into this part of the track, so that's us up into 8th place. And then later on in this lap, on the approach to Spoon, the Spaniard goes defensive but leaves just enough space for us to stick the nose of the car up the inside, and that was us up into 7th place, which was not a bad recovery given a 5-second penalty on lap number 3 and the fact we fell down to 13th. We started the race in 7th, so we'll call that one par for the course. So let's move on to the next race. Got the grid start there, the grid formed up. Now, there had been some disconnections in this one. I think we lost about 7 drivers. So we're starting this one in 5th place. We've still got the same qualifying time, didn't get a chance to set anything better. Good start, we're underway. As you can see, everyone tends to get off the line very similarly. So you've not got kind of different cars, maybe like Group 4 or Group 3, where the cars can have sort of different launches. So everyone does come into turn 1 very close, but with enough space to avoid any major contacts. And generally, there's not been a massive amount of penalties into turns 1 and 2 from what I've seen, certainly in my races anyway. So we'll settle into 5th place into this one. Now we are looking to kind of try and repair the damage of the last race. We did actually lose quite a bit of DR in the last one. So we're looking for a good result here to try and beat some of the A+ drivers. I think P4 in front of me, P1 is also an A+ driver, and there's a A+ driver starting towards the rear of the grid. On the approach down to Degner number 1 here, we've got a couple of drivers side by side. Not a good idea to go side by side through Degner, but the only driver who's going to drop the ball happens to be the pole sitter. So Supra's gone wide there into Degner number 1, comes back onto the track, compromises our line into Degner number 2, but no harm done, and that's us up into 4th place. So yeah, I think going off at Degner number 1, fairly easy accident to have. Just catch that curb in the wrong way and you get dragged wide. So out the hairpin we come, in the slipstream of the French driver here. Slipstream very important in this race, as it tends to be in most GT Sport races, but in these cars, but they're underpowered, the slipstream can be a real big help. You really can stick with a driver who's considerably quicker than you, just purely through the slipstream. I guess when you think about it, because these cars are much slower, the straights take a lot longer to negotiate, so you do tend to spend more time in the slipstream in these cars than you do in a race car. So Lawrence going defensive there, he's leading at the moment. We've seen Lawrence in the last race. We're snaking down this back straight, he's doing a little bit of weaving, maybe not the best racing etiquette, but it doesn't look like it's going to have too much of an impact as we go into 130R here. Can we get a move on the Frenchman? We've taken a slightly better line. The Frenchman, there you go, there's what I was saying earlier on in the last race. If you don't get the line right into 130R, then you can run wide and it's not full throttle. You might have to give it a slight little lift. And because he's managed to catch that curb, it's allowed us to go round the outside in a very nice overtaking manoeuvre into the chicane. So can we make further progress down into turn number 1? Actually just realised there we've not quite got the battle with the French driver done. Fortunately, Lawrence 3-2-1 moves over onto the racing line where we are, and that gives us the slipstream. That should just be enough to drag us far enough ahead of the French driver into turn number 1, and it does. 4 drivers all under my radar there as we go into turn number 1, but everybody seems to be keeping it nice and clean. And I have to say, the driving in this race, or pretty much all the races I've done, has actually been very respectful. Lots of close battle and lots of rubbing, but in these cars I think that's allowed. But yeah, generally everyone driving to a very fair standard, which is always nice to see. So we're getting held up by Lawrence here. We're sort of ducking and diving, weaving in and out, looking for a chink in his armour to try and get into P2, because we can see the Spaniard in at P number 1 is now beginning to open up a pretty significant gap. And once that gap gets up to about 2 to 3 seconds, you're going to be really struggling to try and bring it down. Taking a look round the outside of Spoon, but we decided to back out of that. A move around the outside of Spoon is not a smart place to be. Sort of settle back in, try and get a better run out of Spoon onto the back straight, and we've got a bit of a run on Lawrence here down towards 130R. Now, you really don't want to be going side by side with another car into 130R, but it looks like we're going to leave it in here, maybe against our better judgment. We are sort of slightly edging ahead there. We both managed to get through quite safely, but we've both been hugely compromised, and there's going to be a driver appear out of nowhere. It's a Cinco PS there. I'm not sure what that flag nationality is. I think it's somewhere in the Middle East. Maybe somebody could correct me. I will look it up after finishing this commentary. I do like to be able to sort of say what the flags are of the drivers above me. But yeah, this driver started down in P12 in this one, which was last place. I did notice he was an A+ driver. And he's clearly got a good bit of speed about him, because while we've been squabbling, he's managed to negotiate the majority of the field. And just like that, he's going to move up into P number 2. With a bit of a robust move in Lawrence, we're actually going to follow through with a kind of equally robust move, but we had to take that opportunity. We had been stuck behind Lawrence up until this point, so just using that kind of fact that Lawrence was pushed offline a little bit to make up that position. So you can just see how fast Cinco was. He sets the fastest lap there easily. Look at that gap he's opened up to me over the course of one lap. Unfortunately for Cinco though, he's going to go too fast into turn number 1 here and have a bit of a moment. That's going to allow us to move up to P2. Fortunately for Cinco, and maybe a little bit unfortunately for me and Lawrence, given the speed of that driver, he doesn't completely lose it and he manages to filter back into 4th place. So we jump forward here now to lap number 7. We're still in P2 and we've been doing a pretty good job of closing this Spaniard down. I think he was around about 3.5 seconds ahead of us at one point. We've got that gap down to 1.5 seconds as we come into the last lap. We actually got a little bit deep into the chicane here, not perfect. We've still got the close attention of Lawrence and the recovering Cinco behind us. So we're going to take a look behind us here. You can see Cinco and Lawrence are side by side down the main straight. So I'm thinking at this point, who do I want behind me on the last lap? Now we know Cinco's very fast. Got a 1:31.0 as his fastest lap there, so we give the slipstream to Lawrence to let him pull ahead, but unfortunately we're spending way too much time looking behind us instead of ahead of us. We're way too deep into turn number 1. Catch that curb, we don't manage to catch it. The car went round very quickly in fairness, and we are left red-faced with embarrassment as we get reset back to track, now down in 5th place. So talk about throwing away a good finishing position. I think we could probably even have maybe started to put some pressure on the Spaniard towards the end of the race, but instead we've binned it, and no wonder our driver is walking away from the car with a disconsolate look on his helmet. So let's move on to the next one. Can we redeem our embarrassment from the last race and possibly pick up an actual strong result? So we did another race before this one where it was a very close battle, and then I got spun out, or I guess kind of spun myself out on the chicane on the last lap. I did mean to record that one, but I think I just left the lobby straight away in frustration, because that was then 3 races where in various ways a good result had kind of been denied. So could we kind of redeem ourselves in this one? Now we did set a qualifying, or a better qualifying lap for this one. We set a 1:31.1, so we are starting a little bit further up the grid in this one. So 3rd place start, 3rd place maintained off the grid. Let's see if we can kind of pick up a podium, or maybe even a little bit of a victory, which would be nice to finish off the session. So we've got Brackus back in front of us again. He's starting in pole position, and we've got a GTP driver, an Irish driver there in P number 2. So I have to say that I did have my reservations about this race when I first seen it appearing on Kudos Prime, but it turns out it's actually a very decent race. It's really good fun, very close racing. Obviously the grid start helps with that. These cars are pretty nice to drive as well. Suzuka kind of takes on a slightly different flavour, to be honest with you, in a car like this compared to one of the sort of maybe a Group 2 or a Group 3 car. So yeah, I was kind of, when I seen it was Suzuka once again in N200, I did think this race might be one that I would avoid, but I found myself doing it a lot more than I thought, and it's just because you've got that really close action, good fun, close fight with other drivers. The penalty system has its odd moments, there's no two doubts denying that, but in general I think you can kind of get away with quite a bit of robust racing with other drivers and not to get penalised too often. Anyway, back to the race here. You can see that P1 and 2 are fighting, not quite like cats and dogs at this point, but certainly Brackus having to go defensive into quite a few of these corners. I think he's going to go defensive here again off of Spoon on the run down to 130R. Now I'm trying not to get involved too much, I'm just trying to make sure we can open up a gap to P number 4 here over the opening laps, and then we can fight for the podium positions a little bit later in the race. But it looks like GTP U4IK hasn't got the memo. He's going to kind of keep fighting with Brackus, as he's got every right to do, and Brackus is going to keep defending, as he's got every right to do, down into the chicane here. But unfortunately, all this really does is allow the drivers to behind us to close up. I do think we take a little bit of a look behind us here, and we don't, we're actually going to fast forward. But yeah, that kind of fighting into the chicane there actually allowed the 4th place driver to go from nearly a second behind us to 4/10. So it just goes to show how easy it is to lose time with squabbling. GTP though keeps wanting to get into P number 1, Brackus keeps defending, kind of working for me. We do seem to be a reasonable bit quicker than P number 4 even with the fighting, so we are pulling away anyway. Looks like the Irish drivers get a better run on Brackus down here to 130R, so we're going to try and capitalise on this. Now I've seen this move a couple of times before. Brackus is going to be compromising speed and the Irish driver is going to go flying off the track, so I knew if we could just keep our foot in, we could go for this kind of move here, down into the inside of the chicane, get it stopped nicely on the brakes, hit both our apexes. Brackus gives us the room, gives us the racing respect, and that was quite a nicely executed move down into the chicane. That's kind of a theme of this race, to be honest with you. You've got drivers fighting in front of you, they're sort of so engrossed in the battle that they're having, they don't really see a driver coming up behind them, and you can quite easily pass a couple of cars that are fighting with you just because of the way they're fighting. And it's happened in sort of both respects to me as well. I've been the driver fighting and had cars come out of nowhere and overtake me, a bit like we've seen Cinco do in the previous race, and I've also been able to capitalise. But this race, that was pretty much the action for this one. Me and Brackus kind of worked together after that instant, pulled away from the rest of the field, and then kind of sorted it out over the last couple of laps. Fortunately for me, Brackus made a bit of a mistake into turn number 1, allowed me to open up a gap, get that slipstream opened up and away, and in the end, pull a fairly comfortable victory, which was a nice way to finish after the misdemeanours of some of the previous races. So win number 47 there for Womble Boss. I think since then we've picked up win number 50. Actually had quite a good run after this race. I think I won the next 3 races that I entered the next day, and then picked up a 2nd place as well. So it's been quite a good race for me, this one, in terms of being able to sort of keep this account's DR pretty high. Anyway, again, I'll just reiterate, if you've not tried this race, do give it a go. It is a good fun race, good close action. You might be pleasantly surprised by how enjoyable it is. And just to finish, we will, even though I don't like to say it too often, usually sort of only mention it towards the end of the videos. We did mention it earlier on, but please do hit that like button, please do hit that subscribe button if you haven't already, as we keep trying to grow this channel slowly but surely. But until the next video, if you've made it this far, thank you very much for listening to my waffle, and I shall see you on the next one. Goodbye now.